Hello guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and all you middle-aged mall walkers out there in the YouTube universe. Today we're going to be making some stairs for tabletop games like Dungeons & Dragons, Warhammer, Frostgrave, etc. And for this project, we will be using the Dungeons & Caverns Core Set, which is a craft kit sent to me by the Army Painter. So I am obliged to say that this is a promoted video. Even though they didn't give me money, they gave me a product, and per FTC regulations, I'm obliged to mention that. This is called the Game Master Dungeons & Caverns Core Set, which I've already done a video on this, and if you would like to have a look at that, I'll put a card up there. Something about making stairs has always been a bit problematic for me in crafting terrain. And it's one of those concepts where if the stairs are too big, they can look clunky. And if they're too small, then your miniature won't fit on it, which can be a problem. So I was really pleased to see this little tutorial in their book. And I thought, I'll give it a try. And I think these work out great. They look fantastic. The materials the Army Painter gives you in their kit work out perfectly. I think this kit is really cool because it gives you everything you need to make craft terrain for your tabletop all in one kit. It even comes with a ruler, some paint, a hot wire cutter, a straight edge, and more. Feel free to check out the review I did for this craft kit to see all the cool stuff you get inside. First step is to take a look at the really cool booklet that they give you, which gives you step-by-step instructions on how to craft dungeon terrain with this kit. And then what I did is I cut off a section of the white European XPS foam that they gave me, and I made it 2 inches wide, and I just cut a really long narrow strip. Then I went back and I measured out the length of the stairs. So I decided to make the stairs 2 inches by 1 inch, which in D&D game translations equals 10 feet by 5 feet. This is big enough to hold 2 miniatures, and it doesn't look really clunky at all. It actually looks pretty cool. The concept with this build is to make various small rectangles and then pile them up together, leaving an inch space to make the stair. Then with some painting magic and some weathering and distressing, we can turn this XPS foam into some really cool, authentic looking stone stairs. The next step is to grab your favorite PVA glue, and for this I'm using Eileen's because it reminds me of my mother who passed away about 12 years ago, and she even had a pursed size version of the Eileen's tacky glue. In our house we called it Arlene's, but I've learned from YouTube comments that we've been mispronouncing it. I guess that's what happens when you're from the Midwest and your family is composed of first and second generation immigrants. So anyway, I'm sorry I digressed a little bit. Back to the construction of the stairs. So what I like to do now is make sure that the back of the stairs is as flat as possible so that when I put them up to against a piece of terrain, there's not a huge gap. And for this, you can use your work table or grab your D&D player's handbook, and that makes a great flat surface. See how that all lined up nice and neat like that? This will be great for Frostgrave. Here I made a variety of different sizes to demonstrate that you don't have to stick to the formula that the guidebook recommends. This one right here has 3 1-inch squares, which in D&D terms would mean that these steps are 15 feet long by 5 feet. The next step is to take the X-Acto blade that is included in the kit, or your own, or any kind of straight edge that's sharp, and carve out the sections that we drew on to give the effect of a stone tile. You don't have to do this, but I think that this just gives more of a tiled stone effect and adds to the authenticity of the build that we're going for. And I used the blunt section of this mechanical pencil to carve out the tiles to create the illusion of weathering and to just kind of get the effects that this stone has been through a rough time. It's old, it's been cut up, and you can see here I start even beveling some of the edges of the stairs. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love deconstructed artwork, dresses, suits, and weathered effects, which I think is one of the reasons why I really enjoy like the older Star Wars, because it has a nice gritty feel to it. One of the few critiques I have with this kit is the straight edge really isn't the best quality. But let's get back to the kit. Here is what our final project, the look that we're going for, a basic stone weathered dungeon tile. You can paint these whatever color you want. I just went with the traditional stone gray, which is what they give you in the kit. You don't even have to buy the paint. Right now, what we're doing is we're doing the weathering part. When carving into this creation, I made sure to bevel some of the lower parts of the structure just to give it more of a realistic effect. Because if this was sitting out in, say, the ruins of Felstad for Frostgrave or some underground Wanti temple or something, maybe it's an old dwarven fortress that has been taken over by orcs or something along those lines. Whatever your need is, it's going to be weathered all around. I really took my time and put in a lot of effort with the XPS foam. And one of the things I really like about this foam is that it's very malleable. It's a softer foam than what we can find in the USA or Canada, I presume, in North America. And so it's almost as if you can sculpt it. It sounds a little weird, but you can create rounded edges with your hand. It's quite amazing. I think it's quite amazing, actually. And through the magical power of editing, here is what the piece looks like before I put paint on it. It's all nice and weathered. There's some gaps. This looks like it's been around for quite some time, even though it's a brand new product. Pretty pleased with the effect. And the next step is to grab a rock and just take that and scratch it around on the surface, create some dents on the stairs, the foam that will soon be our stairs, create some weathering texture. This will enable us to dry brush some really cool highlights further down the road. So just any old craggly rock will do. I used a geode that was split in half just because that's what I had close by. Probably not the best choice. So then I found a piece of chunky cement outside and I just went ahead and used that instead because I felt like this would give a better textured effect and create more ripples and rough edges, and I was correct. Next up is spray priming our creation. If you don't have this spray primer, you can use a combination of PVA glue and black paint or Mod Podge and black paint. But in this kit, you get a rattle can that is a water-based spray paint terrain primer for foam. How cool is that? These spray paint rattle cans come in a variety of colors. The one that I'm using here is called Dungeons and Subterrane, which is intended for this project. This is a really cool thing just to have. And this water-based spray paint primer for foam craft projects matches up to their army paint color called Hardened Carapace, which I think is really cool. I can only think that Army Painter does this by design. They match up their primers to their paints, so if you want to go seamlessly from one to the other, it just works out. And on the side of the can, they give you instructions on how to use this. Found it very useful with the instructions of turning the can upside down to clean out from the paint for better storage, and so that your tools remain well preserved. And after we finish priming our craft project with the water-based spray-on foam, this is what it looks like. Now that we have finished creating and priming our terrain piece, it's time to paint it. And for that, I'm going to use this color palette right here, all of which is provided in the kit. And first off, I'm going to start with this color called Dungeon Base. This comes in a little bit of a larger container than the other paints by Army Painter, and this is very similar to a craft paint, except the quality's a little bit better. The pigments are a little more richer and in depth, and what I'm going to do here is just put on a coat. And the coat doesn't have to be perfect, because we want a little bit of that black to show through for like a little bit of a shadow effect, kind of trick the eye a little bit. So I go ahead and give this a nice little base coat with the Dungeon Base paint all over the stairs. And ta-da, look at that. See? I didn't even do a solid base coat. I think it looks nice when it's all rough. Here's a compare and contrast between two different sets of the stairs, so you can see what it looks like before and what it looks like after. But wait, there's more. The next paint that I chose to go with was the Dungeon Highlights, which is a little bit of a lighter color Be sure to shake your bottles well. And for this, I just took a little bit on my paintbrush and just sort of tapped it everywhere. Tap, 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 tap. Bit on the edges. Tap, tap, tap here. Tap, tap, tap there. Hopefully you can see how that just starts making this piece pop. It gives it a little bit more of a three-dimensional effect. Tapping a little bit of this dungeon highlight everywhere separates the color just enough. And it's very subtle, but it makes a world of difference. And once again, here's a side-by-side so you can compare and contrast and see what that just little bit of extra paint, how it just completely transforms this terrain piece. But wait, we are still not finished with this project. Next up, I went with the Army Painter Dungeon Effects, which is pretty much just a white paint, but like I say, Army Painter has really good quality product. And for this, I tap a little bit of paint on, and it's almost like a dry brush. And I say almost a dry brush because it's not quite an overbrush, but it's not quite a dry brush either. I took a little paint, and then I scraped some of it off on the cardboard next to it, and then just sort of did my dry brush technique and tapped it everywhere. Sometimes I went a little heavy, but you can blend that out. And before I forget, I'd also like to mention that these brushes came in the kit. Pretty much everything I used to create this came from the kit. The only things that I didn't use from the kit were the Eileen's Tacky Glue and the Sharpie to draw out my design. And the next step in our tabletop crafting stair making journey is to add the wash. And once again, I used something that came from the kit. This is called Subterranean Wash, and it adds a really nice weathered, dirty effect to your terrain piece that's going to make it a little bit more on the authentic side. So I literally put that everywhere. I made sure to get it in the nooks and crannies and the cracks and crevices that we created with our X-Acto blade and our rocks. So go ahead and do this to your heart's content. Have fun with it. There's really no right or wrong way to do this, as long as you're happy with the end result. As I mentioned previously, this kit comes with several brushes, so I thought I would take some footage of one of the brushes so you can see the quality. And the last step in our project is to take some more of that Dungeon Effects paint, the white paint, and tap that on our terrain pieces after we have done our wash. This is going to just reinforce those highlights a little bit. On this, I want to be a little bit on the subtle side. We already have a layer of this Dungeon Effects paint on our terrain piece, but that got muted down a little bit by the wash. And so now all I'm doing is just bringing back hints of that highlight. Now that we've got this done, the terrain piece is finished. Congratulations, you now have some amazing stairs for your tabletop terrain. Thank you very much for watching this content until the very end. If you feel like supporting this channel, please hit the like and the subscribe button. Or you could buy some of the Warren Christmas Village miniatures, or support one of our Kickstarters, or buy some of our digital 3D print and paint files. And I also recently set up a Patreon account, so if you'd like to toss me some coins, it'd be much appreciated. Have a good one and stay safe out there.